Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Is someone on the call? Can you hear me? Okay, I'll start with the prayers. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. This is Govardhan Lila. I just joined, but I'm in the store, so I have to, I have to mute them for a little bit. Okay.
Okay, Mataji.
Thank you. I'm going to
can you call Shanti Mataji, Govardhan Lila Mataji? Can you call her on conference?
She told me not to call her. She'll call me if she can join. I already spoke to her.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Manasi Ganga Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisance. Glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev.
Please accept mine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Who else is on the call today? Besides Govardhan Lila Mataji and Manasi Ganga Mataji. Okay, Mataji. I think these are the only people on the call. If you give me a second, I'll conference Jhanva Mataji.
Okay. Would you like me to call anybody? Molly? No. Good girl.
Okay, Mataji. So we are reading from Canto 2, Chapter 10. The name of the chapter is Bhagavatam as the answer to all questions. And we are reading verse 10 today. Purusho anandam vinir vidya yada sausa vinirgata Atmano ayanam anvichan apo asakshit chichukshi. Translation. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance of the first Purusha avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental waters, Garbhodaka. So, Manasi Ganga Mataji, would you like to read the purport?
Okay, I have a book there, so I can read.
Sure.
A purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all other living things, Srila Sukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Sukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Pariksit, describes herein the independence of the Purusha avatar personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of the material creation. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also Lila, or pastimes, of the absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization in the field of devotional service. Some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental Lila of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will understand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord.
Misunderstand.
Will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are verily relishable by the prakrita, or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system, mainly based on bodily exercises, is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too material attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relationship with the Lord are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotees and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord, who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows. Mayadyaksana prakrti suyate sakcha racharam hetunanena kutenya jagad viparivartate. The material nature full of physical laws is one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendentally all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, The physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent, without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita 9:11 replies to this foolishness in the following words: Avajananti mam muda manusim tanun astritam varam bhavam ajananto mama uta maheshvaram. The foolish men, mudaha, do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends himself by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and the infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the Mudas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord, Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the Mutas give submissive and oral reception to the messages of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the channel of disciplic succession, such Mudas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. Complete.
Thank you, Manasi Ganga Mataji.
Okay.
So, I think whoever is on the call today, I think they know about the Purusha avatars. Purusha avatars are Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Right, Manasi Ganga Mataji?
Yes, partially. I partially know.
Yeah. So, and now, let us imagine for a second that we are in 8th grade. Okay, all of us are in 8th grade. In India, it is called geography. I don't know what it is called in United States. And when they teach about how many planets are in the solar system, and the sun is at the center, and all the planets move around the sun. In which grade is it taught in United States? Is it still called geography in the United States?
Well, the universal geography is not called geography. Geography is technically talking about just planet Earth and the different land masses and water bodies. So in my understanding of the universe, I think that in at least the way that I was taught when I went through the school system, they teach a little bit in science each year. It's not like big, a year-long thing. It's just a small little unit. At least that's the way I was taught and the way I taught in the elementary here.
Okay. Okay.
Just small little units. Yeah.
Yeah. In India, when we were growing up, like usually in the starting from the third grade, I think they start teaching about the solar system.
Yeah, right, solar system.
Yeah, they talk about the solar system from third grade in India. So whichever grade it is, now let us imagine we are, okay, let's say we are in 8th grade, okay? And the teacher enters and all of a sudden the student tells the teacher, Madam, creation happens when a person is lying in an ocean, when God is lying in the ocean, and from the pores of his body, small universes appear, and he glances over them, and that's how creation happens. What would be the reaction of the teacher? Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's what they would say. God, let's not talk about God. Let's just talk about facts. That's what they'll say.
Yeah. So, and now if, that is because for years and years and years we have received this training in modern science where they never mentioned the name of God. And all they talk about is the matter and laws of matter. Governing what we see around us. So,
is anybody able to? Is that you?
It's me. I'm in the temple. Unfortunately, I don't have a place.
Okay, don't worry.
To go, so all that noise is from me.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
No problem.
But at the same time, like imagine somebody who is from a Vedic background, okay, and they have learned from Srimad Bhagavatam about the process of creation. And now, if we go and tell them how do all the planets operate, and then we go and tell them, there was something called nothingness. Out of that nothingness, there was a big bang, and from that big bang came all of creation. And how did all that creation come? It just came, and all these living entities came, and there is order.
And there was order.
The system.
Order, yeah.
Yeah, there is order in the system. How did all that happen? It just happened. That's all.
That sounds even more crazy.
So now, like, for the materialist, we will sound crazy, and for the spiritualist who actually has studied the Vedas, whatever they are saying sounds crazy. So there might never be an overlap in one sense. So, but this is what is the bridge, that has been created because of our educational system. But at the same time, this is what Srila Prabhupada is trying to say, that if we continue with that understanding of life, we might feel lost. And if we take a moment to analyze how the society is around us, because of because of ignoring God, the hearts of the people in the society have become hard. We have all become hard-hearted. We just don't know how to share. We just don't know how to enjoy with each other. We have become bundles of fear roaming around in society. I don't know if this is just me or if everybody feels like that, but this is actually one of the things that happens when God goes out of the picture. Fear takes over. So Sukadev Goswami, he has so far analyzed that there are living entities, there is material nature, and there is the soul, and all three of them are interdependent. And now he's presenting that every living entity, in order to feel happy, has to take to devotional service of the Lord as their only business. I think this is a very critical and important understanding, because all of you can add, but at least in my understanding or in my analysis, if I look at the world around us, because of disregard for God and His laws, and not having a proper understanding of God and the laws that have been given by Him, our society has completely strayed apart, strayed away from peace and happiness. Even if you analyze a society, even within this material world where there is existence of God, you will find some semblance of happiness and peace. For example, we went to, I think that place is located in Tennessee. It's called as the Bible Belt. Do you know about it, Manasi Ganga Mataji, the Bible Belt?
Yeah, I think southern part of the United States is a little bit maybe more religious, whatever, or fundamentalists live there.
And even when there is a slight semblance of God, even if we don't understand God fully, there is lot more peace and happiness in the hearts of such people. So when we went, actually, the lady who was, we were staying with at a devotee's place, and she was telling everybody in this community, they contribute at least 10% of their earning to the church. They give at least 10% of their earning to the church. So, and as a consequence of that, like she was saying, you will never find that they are not working hard. They're always working hard. Even if you're not around, you can be assured that the job will be done. So, I mean, this is just one example of many examples that I can think of. Like when God comes into the picture, there is always hope and a fresh kind of happiness and enthusiasm in people's hearts. Now, people may argue that, the other thing is also true, that, people in the name of God, they go and kill other people. They go and hit the Twin Towers to make God happy. Unfortunately, that is also true. Like, people have done such things also, but they have not taken the time to understand God, His laws, and His creation. It's their own propaganda or their own mental concoction of God wants, and they have done such things. But we are very fortunate to come across the proper teachings of God, and we are given this opportunity to understand God and His teachings in a very meaningful way. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is saying. That is the message that is given by the disciplic succession. The message of God is not tampered with. And we can understand God and His creation very accurately through the presentation of Srila Sukadev Goswami in Srimad Bhagavatam. So here it says, after analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, and the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Sukadev Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. So Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't shy away from telling us this truth, that the purpose of our entire existence is to have a loving relationship with the Lord. And it's very explicit from the very get-go. Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't hide it at all. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. So this is explained in Brahma Samhita very nicely. So if we take a candle, and there are several other candles, and if we light each of the candles with the original candle, then all of the candles will have the same brilliance as the original candle. So Krishna is the original, in the analogy, Krishna is the original candle. And from him, all other plenary portions and portions of the plenary portions, they all appear, like Vishnu, Narayan, Balaram, and Vasudev, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Lord Ramachandra, Narsimha. They're all coming from, all of his avatars are coming from Krishna. He's the original candle. But there is no difference between, in one sense, there is no difference between how independent Krishna is and how independent these plenary portions are. In order to prove this, Sukadev Goswami describes herein the independence of the Purusha avatars, personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of material creation. Now, Sukadev Goswami is describing about Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Generally, for a child to be born, we need both the father and the mother. Without the father or the mother, the child cannot be born. But Krishna is so independent, he does not need a female counterpart for creation. All of the creation happens just by his willing. Krishna is, Mahavishnu is lying in the causal ocean, and it is his pastime. He just has to glance, he just has to will that creation has to happen, and from the pores of his body, the hair holes of his body, all the seeds of creation come. So this is what he is saying, the independence of the Purusha avatars. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, therefore they are also Leela or pastimes of the Absolute Lord. So these are also Leelas of Mahavishnu, the pastime of creation. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization in the field of devotional service. So, when we are practicing devotional service, all these activities of the Lord, which are completely transcendental, will purify our heart. That's why they're very conducive for our self-realization. Some may argue, then why not relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Actually, it is true. All the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan are very, very sweet. Because, in Vrindavan, Krishna exhibits himself as a small child. And it's very easy to relate to such experiences as human beings, because we see these things happening around us. And when we think of Krishna doing all these things, like it's very sweet and relishable. So some people may argue and say, okay, I listen only to Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and Mathura. But what do the Acharyas say? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related by creation, maintenance and destruction are very relishable by the Prakrita or mundane devotees of the Lord. So this is the answer to that question. Srila Prabhupada always used to say, please read Srimad Bhagavatam systematically. Don't jump to the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Please read the first canto, then the second canto, then the third canto, then the fourth canto. Finally, when you reach the 9th canto, then your heart and mind are prepared to receive Krishna. So this is what Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says, that we are not so advanced. In the very beginning, if somebody reads just the pastimes in the 10th canto, they may misunderstand the transcendental position of the Lord. That's why it's important to understand the position of the Lord in a systematic fashion. Now, there is another point that Srila Prabhupada makes. That's the first point. First is that we may misunderstand. And the second point is, as the yoga system mainly based on bodily exercises is meant for persons who are too much attached to the bodily consumption of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. Actually, it is true, even as devotees, sometimes we cannot relate to, if you just say, please chant Prabhu, we cannot relate to it. It's hard for us, even as devotees, even after having heard so many instructions about chanting, still, to just sit and chant, which is actually the function of the soul, to glorify the Lord, is still difficult for us. But, if you go out on book distribution, many of the people will say, we want to learn yoga. Why do they want to learn yoga? Because they're convinced, and even as devotees, it's far hard for us to come to a spiritual conclusion or a spiritual conception of life. But if you say yoga, qigong, all these things, you'll feel, my body will remain fit for me to, do something useful. So actually, this is not a bad thing. It is even recommended in scripture. So some form of physical exercise to control the mind is good. So this is what Prabhupada is also saying. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relation with the Lord are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So because it's very difficult for us to relate to a boy, bluish boy, who's lifting Govardhan Hill when he's just 7 years old with his little pinky of his left finger. A logical mind, especially with the background that we are set up with in modern schools, it's very hard to relate to and understand. But if we try to explain the laws of God and how creation happens from a Vedic perspective, perhaps it's much better and easier for us to relate to. So from that perspective also, it's good to read about the creation of the universe and all these things. This may actually make us make the hearing easier about God. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material science, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. So this is what has been happening, is that they talk so many things about physical laws, but it's hard for them to understand that there can be a lawmaker behind it. because they never talk about it. So because of that training of never talking about God, it becomes difficult to accept God because of such years and years of training. Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. So Srila Prabhupada always used to say, when a small child looks at the car, he thinks as if the car is moving on its own. But an adult will know that behind the car is an engineer and a person is actually driving it. So similarly, when we see all these amazing things around us, we can understand that behind those amazing things that are happening around us, there is a controller. So Srimad Bhagavatam is pointing us to that direction, that there is a controller. One should not, I read that. That is the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord who directs the physical laws. In Bhagavad Gita, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows. Maya adhyakshena prakriti. So Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, Maya adhyaksha. Adhyaksha means supervision. Maya means my. So everything around in Prakriti, Prakriti means material nature, is happening under my supervision. Tuyate sacharacharam. Hetu nanenu kauntiya jagat vipari vartate. So Krishna is telling the material nature full of physical laws is one of my different energies. Out of many energies that Krishna has, material nature is one of his energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind, because I am transcendently all-powerful. Simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. So, Mahavishnu is lying in the causal ocean, and all he has to do is to just look at Prakriti. And through his glance, everything starts to move. So in the coming verses, we'll learn more and more about how all these things, start to fall into place. But basically, just by the glance of Mahavishnu, the entire creation happens. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account. And thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, astonished by studying the physical laws both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent without any metaphysical control. So, for whatever reason in human society, at one point, people stopped believing in God, trusting in the scriptures, because actually, something good, usually people discard it because someone has abused it. Someone has abused the system. That's why they discard the whole system altogether. It usually happens like that. Even our mind does that. When we see that there is some form of misconduct from people or authorities whom we trust, then we usually reject the entire thing and we walk away. So, because of the priestly order mostly, because they could not live up to the standard, people rejected religion altogether. So, what happened as a consequence of that is that there is so much knowledge and information which we have also rejected as a consequence of that. So, for example, in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, if when we go there and if we can actually take the time to carefully understand it, The distances between the Earth and other planets, the Earth and the Sun and the Moon, all these are actually described in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in those times, they didn't have Hubble telescopes, they didn't have all the modern technologies that they had to describe it, but it's very accurately described. In fact, I was listening to a lecture, and now, you know how people describe maintenance, destruction of the universe and the creation. They say that actually creation happens from a point of singularity. That's the terminology they use. And what it means is, from a sudden big bang, everything came into existence. And somehow everything is rotating and in place. But after some time, everything will again go back into that point of singularity. In one sense, it is somewhat similar to the Vedic model, except they don't recognize that it's actually going back to Mahavishnu, the pores of Mahavishnu. So, science is defining certain things, but religion has already defined it. I mean, not religion, but the Vedas have already clearly given all this information. We are trying to reinvent it again. So that's what Prabhupada is saying. The Bhagavad Gita replies to the foolishness in the following words: Avajananti ma mudha. So mudha is a person who is extremely foolish. In our language and in Sanskrit, when we call, if a person is very stubborn, very foolish, we call him mudha. So that means it's an insult. It's an insulting word. The foolish men do not know that the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. So when Krishna himself appears on this planet out of his causeless mercy, they cannot understand that it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why they're called Buddha. And what do they think of God? Like, even if actually Krishna comes in front of people, like, how do they think of him? They think of him as another ordinary person. We only think of, because we can only relate to ourselves, our minds only think of even Krishna as an ordinary person. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own. Therefore, he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eye of people in general when he defends himself in his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful knowledge, wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord. But one should know that the infinite and infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. So can anybody say what is this infinite and infinitesimal sizes of the Lord? What is this infinite and infinitesimal?
Infinitesimal, let's see. You're saying, I'm sorry, say those terms again, Mataji. I didn't. Infinitesimal?
Yeah, and infinite.
And infinite.
The infinitesimal means the Krishna in every atom, and the infinite means in his Virat form.
Yes, Mataji. Yeah. Yeah, infinite is Virat form or as Mahavishnu, and infinitesimal, he goes into every atom as Paramatma. Yeah, very nice. So actually, when people think of it, they think of these things as the greatest glories of the Lord. But Prabhupada is saying, no, when Krishna comes as a person and performs his leelas, that's even much more higher. They are higher in terms of understanding God. So the Paramatma feature and Mahavishnu feature are not the highest form of God's activities. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the Mudas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. So because of not hearing properly from the disciplic succession and not performing any devotional service, even if they hear about the glories of the Lord, they dismiss it by saying Krishna was an ordinary man, all his activities are ordinary. They're just some stories, some nice story. They cannot understand that Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being, by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord, with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the Mudas give submissive and oral reception to the messages of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the channel of disciplic succession, such Mudas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. So, see, this is the key. This is the most important thing. If at all we want to come out of the ignorance and illusion that surrounds us, like I can speak for myself, even after practicing for some time. Actually, this is actually, in order to realize God, people used to perform penances for thousands and thousands of years. Now we practice for 5 years or 3 years and we say, oh, I'm like a great devotee. No, it's not like that. In order to understand God, we have to perform austerities. But what kind of austerities? The austerities that are recommended in disciplic succession. That's the easiest way to understand and attain God. So what is the austerity that we have to perform? According to Prabhupada, he's saying we have to give submissive oral reception to Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam through this channel of disciplic succession. So we have to hear these literatures, but from where do we hear? We have to hear in disciplic succession for the messages to take effect in our heart. Such Mudas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in the Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with the poor fund of knowledge. So all these pastimes of the Lord, they have been given for ignorant persons. I can speak of myself. I was once such a Mudha. It was so difficult for me to understand and accept that even God existed. But the devotees were so kind upon me. They gave me a chance to hear about Krishna and they fed me a lot of prasadam until the point that my stomach would burst. And because of all their kindness, at least my mind does not rebel as much when I say that God exists. So that's all I have to say. Anybody would like to add something?
Thank you so much, Lila Manjari Mataji. What a beautiful class. I mean, there are so many things I was thinking of commenting on, and now it's just not coming to me. But can you further explain what? Maybe I didn't hear the. I was in the store, so I couldn't hear fully. You were talking about that Krishna is so independent. He didn't even need a feminine counterpart. I didn't get that part fully.
Yes, Mataji. Yes, that's what I said. That in the process of creation, Mahavishnu was just lying on the causal ocean. And all he had to do was to wish that creation must happen. And
Okay.
all the universes started coming out of his pores. And all he had to do was to just glance at material energy, and the three modes took effect. The time energy, the living entities, everything, karma, everything started to move just by his looking at Prakriti, Mahatattva. Yeah. So what you heard is right. Yeah.
Okay, then where does Brahma come in then?
So Brahma comes in when
because he created the universe, right? He created the material.
Yeah. So that is what we heard, right? There is Sarga and there is Visarga.
Okay.
So Sarga is this part, the first part of creation, when all these seeds of universes come from the pores of Mahavishnu. And
that's right.
Within each universe, he expands as Garbhodakshay Vishnu.
Right.
And from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, a lotus stem appears on which Brahma appears in all of these universes. So there is a different Brahma for each universe. And Brahma creates the second part of creation, happens through Brahma within each universe.
I even talked about that and I messed up.
No, it's fine, Mataji.
Yeah, I sometimes I need to hear it several times. Sometimes it just doesn't stick. The way the creation occurred, sometimes it just doesn't stick, and I have to keep asking the same question, several times. But it was interesting this morning in my class, the Science of Self-Realization, Prabhupada, he was writing to this Dr. Stahl, who was a professor of philosophy and Asian languages, etc., at Berkeley University in California. And this, it was amazing to me that here you have a professor of philosophy saying that he's telling Prabhupada, well, you Hare Krishnas, you just chant all the time, but you don't have a real philosophy. This is what he's saying. And he was more or less shocked that people in the Western world, because you were talking about Western society, and he was talking about the Western world, and that it shocks him that people here who come from a monotheistic tradition or religion would take to an Indian philosophy or an Indian tradition which let's say, what's the word I'm looking for, propagates impersonalism. So it was like, here's this knowledgeable philosopher. He sounded atheistic to me because he didn't even understand that impersonalism is probably only one aspect of Krishna, and as you pointed out, is not the highest aspect of Krishna. It's the Bhagavan incarnation, or the Bhagavan form, that would be higher than the Brahma and the Paramatma features, yes? And he totally did not get that. And so I'm just kind of clarifying what you're saying, that people really have a hard time with that. And they think that because probably people in India are becoming more impersonal, I'm not quite sure. They think that that's who Krishna is. That's who God is. And it because he said that the Western culture is sick of hearing about this monotheistic culture. So it shocked him that that so many Americans took to Krishna consciousness, which is monotheistic and, or if you will, theistic. Let's put it that way, theistic. And the reality is that Prabhupada's response to that was, well, they're sick of it because people aren't really teaching you how to worship that one God properly. And so naturally, they're looking for something that is true, that actually shows how to be devoted to that one God. And so I was amazed. You know, I'm certainly no professor of Berkeley, and I could understand that God, what was the word? What was I trying to say? That God is not impersonal. That's what I was trying to say.
Mataji, Krishna is the property of his devotees. He is not a property of scholars.
Yes, that's very true. So, but you know, I think now, if I'm not mistaken, that you see this professor would not allow a course in Krishna consciousness to be taught at Berkeley for credit. This was back in the 70s. And I believe now there is a devotee who is teaching it there and it is being given for credit. That's my understanding. And so, anyway, I just thought I'd point that out because this morning we were just reading about that, and some people also were having trouble with the idea of a personal God. Very hard even for, I think, some Indian people to believe that. Believe it or not. I never, yes. That amazes me.
Yeah. Because it was brought up since childhood, you know, all we do is watch a lot of movies and TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, you know, creates a lot of material desires in our heart. Then we go to school and then we learn science. So Indians are no longer the same traditional orthodox people who used to learn the Vedas.
Mm-hmm. No. Well, is Ruchi Mataji on the phone? On the call?
I think she's traveling to Colombia. I don't know if it starts today.
Oh, okay.
Something.
Oh, very good. But there was some discussion today about that the deities that we have, Krishna's, you know, the deities in the temples, etc., are man-made. They're not made by God. And I guess when my point was to explain that the deities are made in the image of God as is described in the Vedas. And so yes, they might be stone or whatever. It's God puts his spark in those deities and makes them, you know, real. But the reality is that they are based on something that's not concocted. They're based on something that was discussed in the Vedas. And someone was asking me, where exactly does it describe what Krishna looks like? And if I'm not mistaken, he's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, yes?
You
know, his lotus
is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but I think the process of deity worship comes from Narada Pancharatra. I think that is a scripture where the entire process of deity worship is described. You can ask Chandramali Maharaj more about this question, but to my knowledge, it comes from that scripture, the process of deity worship.
Okay, but not just that, but how the deities look. What, like what Krishna looks like, what Srimati Radharani looks like. I mean, I thought we read in Srimad Bhagavatam, how he's got his peacock feather and, what he wears and his lotus feet and his lotus eyes and his red lips and all that. Is it not?
Yes, Mataji. Krishna is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, but the process of deity worship is described in Narada Pancharatra.
Okay. I want to be able to answer that question for people that have been asking me exactly where that all came from, because some people feel it's concocted, just like in Catholicism, we have deities. We definitely have deities, and not in all Christian churches do you see deities. And they believe that they're, concocted, that a spirit cannot enter that wooden statue or that porcelain statue. Okay, so from where? Oh yeah, you're going to have to spell that out for me. Maybe if you could just email me what it's spelled like, I will write that question to Guru Maharaj, because I haven't read that.
Yes,
anyway, I'm sorry, I probably got off on a tangent here. I'm so sorry, but it came to my mind when you were talking. So, talking about creation and.
So, if anybody has any further questions, please text me or send me an email.
I was just going to make a comment how you had read that Krishna, in his function as creator, how he is so independent. He doesn't even need, like you said, a female counterpart. He's fully independent. But then and Srila Prabhupada talks about how that is appropriate, learning about that is appropriate for those new in Krishna consciousness. And then as time goes on, we learn more about Krishna as a person and his pastime, and yet it goes from this Krishna as being fully independent, the understanding of him, to, as one becomes more and more Krishna conscious, how Krishna, we find out that Krishna actually, with the gopis and the gopas or whatever, he becomes dependent on them. He's a Chuta before, and then as those who are very intimate and close with him, he becomes controlled by their love. And so I just found that was kind of interesting how that it's on both ends of continuum, independent and dependent. And as one comes closer and closer and more Krishna conscious, the understanding, of course, we understand him still as being totally independent, but as we become more and more Krishna conscious, the understanding and going from his Virat form to his personal form, that as one learns more and more about his personal form, one begins to understand that, we hear about the past time about, Krishna says that in the Rasa dance, he turns around and says, I cannot repay you. He's bound to them because of the sacrifices they have made for him. They left their family in the middle of the night to be with him. So I was just noticing how that, that there's a transformation as one becomes more and more Krishna conscious, and this independent understanding also begins to include understanding that the Lord also is dependent. So that was just an observation that I wanted to share.
Yes, Mataji. Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice point that you made. Krishna is a very loving Lord. He's very kind, and he becomes controlled by the love of his devotees. That's true. But when we do not hear from the disciplic succession, the same actions of Krishna are misunderstood. So that's the warning that Prabhupada,
And I was thinking, when you were reading that, before you read that, that it's so very necessary for submissive oral reception. It also takes, I think, at least my understanding, I've heard in other places. I mean, you have to have a spark of faith too, to actually hear submissively. There has to be some faith that one has, and it just baffles me that there's so many people out there that have no understanding that, behind all this order, behind this amazingly complex, manifestation, the solar systems, etc., and all the planets and this and that, they don't understand that there's someone, a controller behind that. And it's just baffling to me that how they can, and that's where that fear is. That fear is that they think that everything that's happening to them, they think it's just random. And if you think that things happening to you and your experience is just random, it becomes a fearful type of situation because you don't understand that there's a loving God behind it all. That's why we
need people like you who can
Yeah. Oh, nothing. Why, what's up? I did? No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
Hare Krishna.
Can you come up here?
Yes,
While I
Mataji.
was helping, I was going out.
I didn't hear what you had said, and
I said
I don't know.
we need people who can preach like you.
Oh, you remember.
Okay.
There is a great need of people who can share Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
And all the sharing begins with prasadam.
Yeah, distribute prashadam, definitely. But yeah, in time.
In fact, today I was in the store and I saw a shirt. It said, "Karma. My karma made me do it."
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're mocking. They're making fun of the. It's almost like, come on, it's all random. It's very impersonal. People don't. A lot of people don't really believe in karma, and I never did until I came to Krishna consciousness. I didn't understand it. I mean, I understood it, but out there, it wasn't something I could personally believe in. And now, of course, I totally believe it. But yeah, I don't want to talk nonsense. Okay.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you for sharing, everyone, and for the nice discussion. So we'll end here for today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for the nice class. There's something in the house for you. Really good, and they were off to the side. actually on a different countertop. That's why there was some left. And the countertop, nobody really saw that there was like a music feature. I don't know why. But he brought soup and salad for everybody today. And so and a couple people knew that he was going to do it, so they brought little snacks. I can't even find my little bag. I had a little, put it in I don't know, I must have dropped it or something. I don't see it. I don't know what I did with it. It must have fallen out of my bag. Something. Here it is. No. Why is eating your stuff okay, but not my stuff?
No, you're looking at me. I already told you.